I was terrified by hard light. I could take a photograph during a golden hour or an overcast day, but going out on the sun, no way. I just didn't know how to deal with the sight, and I know that many of you are in exactly the same boat. But during the years, with getting more and more experience, I developed few methods of how to work with hard sun and how to feel very comfortable outside on the streets. And today I'm actually happy when it's sunny outside because it gives me that opportunity to just go out and play. And that's what we're gonna do today, focus on how we can play with the different types of light. Golden light is wonderful, it's beautiful, but what if I could tell you that you could take dramatic, sharp and punchy and interesting photographs during any time of the day? Stay with me and I show you that hard light is not that scary. One of the first things that we need to understand when we're speaking about hard light is the limitations of the camera. Our eyes and our cameras, they don't have exactly the same vision of the scene. Our eyes are very much capable to see in the same time objects in the very bright areas and similarly details in the darker areas, but the camera is somehow limited. Human eye at the moment is as twice more advanced than most advanced cameras. We can see about 24 different levels of light, and a camera can see maybe 12, maybe 15 in the newest models. Therefore, when we're using a camera, we always need to compromise on a certain range. Sometimes we will focus on the middle tones and the brighter parts of the image, and sometimes we will focus on the darker part and the middle tones, and we will ignore the lights. We can extend that range by using post-processing and AGR software, but that gives the photographs a very unnatural look, and you really don't want to go outside, shoot on the sun and start pulling out shadows, pushing down highlights and trying to fix that image. It just doesn't work good. We need to go with the light. We need to go with the way that our camera sees and try to figure out how to capture it more interestingly. As the sun gets stronger, the dynamic range gets stronger. In the midday, you will have the biggest difference between objects touched by light and objects that are in the shades. And the camera sensors simply cannot accommodate that. But what does it mean? It means that we have to compromise. Since we cannot capture all the ranges of light, we'll have to compromise over the dark parts of the image or the bright part of the image. It's up to us to decide which one is more important and which one we want to show. But what does it mean? It means that we either preserve the bright part of the image and whatever is dark becomes invisible, or the other way around, we preserve the dark parts of the image and whatever is bright becomes invisible. The professional term for that would be burnt highlights or clipped shadows, but both of them mean the same. They basically mean that we're making some part of the image invisible to the human eye. So to get better, you kind of need to learn how to expose properly with your camera. And I'm not speaking about getting really deep technically, but you need to know how to darken your image and how to brighten your image. You can read a little bit more about different metering modes, about exposure compensation, and some cameras can even evaluate the brightest part of the image and set your exposure accordingly to that. But every camera is a little bit different, so you need to know how exactly to darken and brighten the image. I was recently in Vietnam and there is a beautiful procession that happens there every year. But the biggest problem with that procession is that procession is always during the daytime. People are dressed up super nicely and they're walking around and there are parades all over, but the light is super hard. So how do we do it? By my previous experience and by the way that I learned to work with hard light, I managed to accomplish that mission successfully. And we can see some of the results. We often hear that hard light is not good for portraits, that it makes the skin very harsh and better to avoid shooting portraits in highlight. But I can tell you that by using hard light, we can create more interesting and more engaging portraits than by using soft light. Soft light is just, everything is dreamy, no contrast and no punch over there. But when we're working with hard light, you can really place the light in the different places. Yes, the portraits photographed in the hard light, they will introduce harsher skin, but they will give something else, something that you do not see in portraits photographed in soft light. One of the ways that I like to work with hard light is basically massively underexpose. If you're using exposure compensation, just push your camera to -1.5, -2, or if you're using manual settings and metering mode, just expose for the highlights, expose for the brightest part of the image. By doing that, We will make sure to show only what is touched by light and hide everything that is surrounded by the shadows and the darkness. I kind of like to frame that way. We're putting our subject of interest in the place that is lit, and we're using the surrounding shadows to emphasize and to direct the viewer directly to him. And that can create stunning visual photographs. You can use all of the surroundings that are touched by light. You can really pinpoint what will be seen, what will be visible, and what will be not visible in the photograph. And altogether, if you also have good understanding of composition, you can create brilliant photographs. If we keep the camera exactly in the same settings, I like to do something else. I like to walk around and try and see if there is an interesting lights and shadows play anywhere. It can be light that is filtered through the tree leaves, or just it's passing through something or get reflected by something. And if we find such an area, we just need to wait for someone to pass and or enter into that area, and we can create visually interesting images by using that technique as well. But always remember composition as well. The objects shouldn't be just randomly through the frame. Try to create first your frame or the way that you want to frame it, and only then wait for something to happen there. In street photography, this method is called fishing. What photographs really well with hard light is geometry. Geometric figures, building, or even some places in the nature, for example, a desert, can look absolutely stunning in hard light. And at least in my photography, I always also try to include a person or some extra interest there, but you can just play with the geometry as well. You don't necessarily have to include anyone. Probably you've seen many beautiful silhouette photographs that are captured in the golden light, but you can do very similar silhouette work just in the middle of the day. All you need for that is a bright background. You need a background that is strongly touched by the sun, and all you need is just a silhouette or an interesting silhouette to pass through, because just the silhouette of a person is often not enough. You will want him to have, I don't know, some distinctive hat or hair shape, or you can just have some contour that is easily recognizable. Silhouette is a very nice genre of photography, and I really like it. And when I have hard light outside, this is one of the things I'm playing with. And if you want to make it even more interesting, you can try and find a spot where part of the subjects in your frame are silhouettes and the other part is not. That is a harder one. It will require some more pre-visualizing skills from your side and a photography vision, but go for it, try it. Why not? It's an interesting way to photograph as well. I think it's kind of steps up just the silhouette game. Smoke is one of the elements that get really emphasized by a hard light. If a hard light, a strong sun touches a smoke, that smoke leads in a white color. The only thing that you need to pay attention here is so you can have that smoke touched by the light and your subject touched by the light, but the background should be darker. That emphasizes the everything that is touched by the light in the middle. It's similar to the way that we surrounded our bright subject with a dark surrounding to frame him. Here we will just pay attention to have a darker background. And in many cases people ask me, well, Gil, how did you capture this smoke photograph? And the secret is very simple. If you don't see the smoke, the camera does not see it too. You just need to angle. When you see a smoke and a sunlight, you just need to circle around, angle yourself in the right position so you can capture the sun rays touching the smoke, and you have a clear, darker background to emphasize the scene. Sometimes you don't want that light and shadow game. You go outside, you want to photograph people during the sunny day. I was in a pride parade several years ago, and I just recognized that everyone I'm photographing, he has like a panda eyes. Everything is dark below his eyes. So what do? You just use a flash in that situation, and you don't necessarily have to bring that very soft flash with very big softbox and everything. I actually like to have this hard light with harsh flash combination. It creates kind of unique images in its own way. So if you're going to outside to photograph in a similar condition, just use a flash. You can do it. And sometimes things just work in a hard light as well. If you have a strong sense of story and some strong sense of motion, the light becomes a secondary element. If the story is interesting, the people will still appreciate it, even if it's not going to be a beautiful picture, but it can tell them some story that resonates with them, there is no problem. You can still take the shot in a hard life. You don't need the story to happen in a time when the light is more favorable. Just shoot it in the conditions that they are. And my last tip to work with hard light is just use backlights. It's kind of against the rule to shoot directly into the sun, but it can create quite interesting images. You can try that one as well. And if you're frustrated and you say, okay, I'm done with this and I don't want to shoot like that, you can really take an advantage of people who are standing in the shadows. Actually, if a person is standing in the shaded area of a building and he's facing the bright area of the outside of the building, and behind him there is a little bit darker background, it can create very nice transition. It's just very similar to shooting in an overcast day. So even in the most bright conditions, in the stronger sunlight outside, you can always find a shaded area and photograph something happening there. And I'll give you a bonus tip, and this bonus tip is about editing. How do you edit these photographs? Well, actually, it's quite simple. Because you already created quite high contrast in your camera, when you move these photographs into your editing software, you will just have to play a little bit with the contrast, little bit with the whites, shadows, and blacks. It's just tiny adjustments to suit your personal taste. Here is like something that you can use as a starting point. So at the end, hard light is not something that you should avoid. Yes, it can be difficult at the beginning, but you should go out and try the different things that I mentioned. And I'm sure that you will come back with interesting photographs. I do these hard life photography workshops all the time, and people are just amazed from the results. So just go outside, play with shadows, play with light, play with your exposure, and you might capture some great photographs this way. All right, if you liked everything I had to say about light, you know what to do. See you next time.